with our players, it'll be a Thanksgiving meal that we have for them and with them on Thursday. Because there's a lot of things that have changed with our family members and who's allowed, who's not, the numbers of people gathering to celebrate Thanksgiving. But I just want to make sure everybody understands that part for us with our players, that we are handling that. Also, our turkey drive that we have every year that we team up with Cub Foods, who's an unbelievable partner of ours, that will be adapted. It's still going to happen. It's just going to happen in a little different way. So we'll make sure that all the CDC and state guidelines are followed of how we are able to do that. But it will not be our typical turkey drive where people show up at the stadium, come by, meet our players. That is not going to happen. So, but the turkeys and the dinners, they will still be provided by the people that need them, that we have the contact with, and that we provide for yearly. So I just want to make sure everybody knows that. But I hope everybody has a very happy and very safe Thanksgiving this week as we prepare for Wisconsin. So, and the Axe. So with that, we'll open up for questions.
All right, we'll go to Andy Greeter. Go ahead.
PJ, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Andy.
We've talked about what went into 2018 and going to Madison and seeing those building blocks. What did you see kind of coming out of that game? Obviously, you guys had the rally at the school with the Axe, but over the next year, I know you want to separate different years, but what did you see as far as what came out of winning the Axe?
Well, I think that you always want to see proof of something work, right? And you always want to see. So that was our first, I think, big proof of we've done something that hasn't been done in a very long time, right? And it was a historic win for our football program. Especially, we were 5-6. I think we were 20-point underdogs. We weren't favored. Everybody was looking at 5-7. That was the turkey of the year. You can go on and on about all of it, right? And those kids found a way to win. And there was a lot of challenges at that time. There was a lot of players out that football game. There was people who got out in the first quarter of that football game and weren't able to help. So there was so many challenges, and we forced 4 takeaways, and our kids were up 37-7 with a few minutes to go. And Camp Ramble was really quiet. It was one of those statement wins that you said, all right, we've got something going here. And that gave us confidence to be able to go 6-6, get us way more practices, get us the ability to develop a lot more, go in and then beat Georgia Tech in the Quick Lane Bowl. And next thing you know, you're going into next year with pretty much everybody coming back and a whole offseason to get better. And then you win 11 games and that was a huge extension off that. Even though they're separate years, you could see it building. There was still a price to pay. And you weren't losing a lot of people, so you knew you could continue to build off that if the price was paid. And we had a great offseason. But I think that when you look at the rivalry, you look at that game, Wisconsin's a really good football team this year. They've had 5 turnovers last game, which it's hard no matter what team you are to come back from 5 turnovers, especially against a really good team like Northwestern. And you know that they're going to play really well. And we've got to be at our best. We're going to be playing a lot of players. We're going to be rotating a lot of people. I told you before, Andy, that participation number was very high last game, and it was. But that's beneficial, not only for now, but for the future. And that's why you play rivalry games. The records get thrown out the window, and you go there and play, and you play for your state. You play for the people who played before you. You play for the rivalry. You play for the trophy. For 60 minutes, it doesn't matter what you did before that or after that. That's what rivalries are all about. And that's why Minnesota's so fun. We have 4 huge ones. And that's what makes it fun about coming to Minnesota.
All right, let's go to Daniel House.
Hey, PJ.
Hi, Daniel.
I know this has been a unique year for all of you. Everyone in the world is facing challenges and gaining perspective. With that in mind, what are you thankful for this Thanksgiving?
I think someone asked me the question, like, how has this affected you as a coach last press conference? It might've been you, Andy. It might've been Joe. I can't remember. But I've grown so much as a person, as a man, as a husband, as a father, and as a coach. Like, I hope everybody has found a way to grow. You know, there are situations that come into our world and come into who we are and our lives that disrupt our lives every day. This one has affected every single person. This isn't about where you live or where you come from or how old you are. It affects every single one of us through our health, through our finances, through everything. And everybody's affected somehow, some way. And it doesn't discriminate. And so when you start to look and self-reflect of yourself, I said at the beginning of the year, I wanted to be the most empathetic head football coach in America. And being part of this COVID year is part of that. The social injustice is part of that. Being just a better football coach is part of that. Being a better husband is part of that. A father, making sure everybody around me is better. Making sure our players are better. Make sure my players make me better. There's so much negativity, Daniel, in our world right now. And we're talking about the lack of camaraderie, the lack of connection, the lack of people. I know social media is a big part of our world, but it's hard to find anything positive these days. And this is part of the young people's world, is being very grateful for exactly what we have, who we have, and know that in an instant it can be taken away from all of us. I mean, how many of us would ever think a football season could be disrupted like this? Football is what I love. I'm grateful for being a head football coach every day. As long as I get to do it, I'm grateful every day. And I tell our players that I'm living my dream. I get to do that. That's crazy. I'm thankful for that. But I'm thankful for being able to lead young men with them and through this with them, hand in hand, through all the things we're going through. I'm grateful for that. Not just being the leader of it, but learning as the leader of it from them as well. So I'm grateful for a lot, Daniel. And I want to make sure that, we began this year in January with one word. It was grateful. Think about that. January, grateful. I wanted everything in our program, everybody to be grateful. And it's ironic because here we are, we can find everything we're not grateful for. We can find all the wrong. We can find all the bad. We can find all the negative. We can ignore this all we want, and it just continues to show. So if we're grateful for what we have, who we have, and how we have it, perspective is a powerful thing in this world. And we will get through it. We're going to be better for it. We're going to find a way to grow and learn through it. And we're not going to let losing or negativity or things like that affect our row the boat mentality and our row the boat culture. That's what row the boat's all about. I've learned more than ever that this is what row the boat's all about. And it's not for the easy times. It's for times that are really difficult, and it tests you. And not everybody wants to row the boat. It's okay. But this is what it's for. So I hope I answered your question, Daniel. But I'm grateful for an awful lot, man. And especially my family. And I think I speak to everybody. Everybody spend a lot more time with their family than they've ever seen in their entire life over the course of the last year. And part of my family is my players. And I see them more than you actually see your own children. And, and obviously Heather and what she's been able to do throughout this whole thing and the perspective she's had. So sorry, Daniel, for rambling, but that's a loaded question with me.
We'll move to Ryan Burns.
Hey, PJ.
Hi, Ryan.
I was curious if you're expecting Keontae back this week. He's been out the last 3 games with what we assume is COVID. And then I was curious if you have any injury updates on guys like Trayson Potts, Jordan Howden, or Mo Ibrahim.
Wow. That's another low. I mean, there's a lot to answer on that. We hope to get some guys back. I think that's the most generic answer I can give you. We're testing as we speak right now, guys. I'm literally right now. We're testing. We'll get those results back hopefully soon. But again, I think everything is everything that we do on a day-to-day basis has been up in the air since we started this whole thing. And you just take it 1 minute at a time, especially even with the injuries, even with the COVID-19 cases, with opt-outs, with things like that. You take it one day at a time. With staff members, it's one day at a time. And if you start to get ahead of that, that's where I think people really spiral out of control because there's so much out of our control. And I think people need to understand there's so many, this isn't me making the decisions of how many cases we have and cases we don't have and when we should play and when we don't play. There's a series of protocols. There's a medical team, a medical advisory, our administration, the Big Ten Conference that make decisions so we don't, as coaches, ever have to make those decisions. About half of the numbers I told you last week were COVID cases, or medically unavailable. But that's over a period of time. I think everybody heard that number and overreact, go, wow, how could you do that? But it's over that. Remember, players test positive, and if it happens, it's 21 days till you can return. Well, 21 days would take you back to Iowa, Illinois, and the Purdue week. And hopefully you get some guys back that are out of that 21-day window. That number comes down and things like that. But, like I said, that's those calls are made outside of me. And and again, I'm just very thankful that people around us make those calls, have the best interest for our student athletes on our team and our opponent's team at all times. The rapid daily testing has helped all of that. But again, incredible medical people here at the University of Minnesota. Thank them every single day that I see them. Our trainers, our administration, and then obviously they work in connection with the Big Ten constantly. So I just want to make sure I clear that up, because I know when that number gets thrown out, it's not like that's coming from my from my Twitter account, and I'm putting that out there. However, it's a fluid situation, and it's constantly changing and evolving. But again, it's that's where we're at.
Joe Schmidt, KSTP.
Yeah, PJ, we know what a win against Wisconsin meant a couple of years ago for your program. What would it mean at this time through this COVID season, all the players you've had out? What would it mean to your program this year?
Well, we treat it as a one-game championship season. It's a rivalry game. It's a huge game. Records get thrown out the window. It's a one-game championship season against your biggest rival. And it's, and there's 4 huge rivalries here at the University of Minnesota. And Wisconsin's right up there. And this is what's fun about playing here. So this is about more than just our football team. This is about teams of the past, everybody who's played before us and everybody who's going to play after us. This is way bigger than one person, one team. That's what makes rivalries really special. And you just never know what's going to happen on a rivalry Saturday at 1:00. I mean, that's what's so cool about this thing. I smile thinking about it just because I get so excited. That's why you come coach at this level, play at this level, for rivalries like this. And it would mean a lot on both sides. I think I speak for both teams, how historic that trophy is, how much it means to both programs, and they want to keep it. We'd like to get it back. And I think that's pretty much what all has to be said. I think we know what the rivalry means.
Let's go to Meg Ryan with the Star Tribune.
Hi, Meg.
Hi, PJ. Happy Thanksgiving and happy early birthday, too.
Oh, I slide that one in there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I keep track. So I've got a couple quick follow-ups about the COVID situation, if you'll kind of allow me to run through them.
Sure.
Just as a point of clarity for the first part, any update right now of any more positive tests? I know you said you're testing right now, but over the weekend, have there been any more positive results that you can share?
Well, right now, like I said, we're testing right now. The good thing about it is anybody who has tested positive, I don't know how you say the word serious cases. We've had some symptoms, mild symptoms and asymptomatic people when we've been able to test everyone, but we haven't had anybody hospitalized with it and things like that, which is there's people all over the country that are dealing with this, and so many lives have been lost and so many people hospitalized, and cases all over the country go up and down. And it's really sad. But again, for us, we're in the process of testing right now. And we're going to handle that as they continue to come in.
Okay. And then just as one more too, when is there a certain timeline when you would have to decide? Obviously, I know with the Big Ten protocols, if you're in the red for both those things, it makes the decision for you, right? But speaking of Wisconsin, the opponent this week, I think they canceled their Nebraska game back towards the beginning of the season before they had to necessarily. So I don't know how, I guess, does that process that decision get made of maybe it's not an immediate, you guys have to cancel the game, but how do you guys kind of debate whether it's enough to maybe impact this weekend's game? And when?
Yeah, well, first, what happened, just so you know, Meg, if anyone ever tests positive, okay, they're presumed positive. There's a presumption that they're positive. Then they have to go through another series of tests, right? And that takes a little bit longer. And then that test, determines whether they have that or it's a false positive. And I think that's what everybody's waiting for with that. Now, when you start to come back and you start talking about when people decide to play or not decide to play, that's the great thing about being the head football coach, as you get to, we're game planning. Our whole thing is, we plan on playing. We plan on playing last week. I don't make any of those calls. Those come from our medical staff, our medical team, teamed up with our administration, teamed up with the Big Ten, and everybody working and walking hand in hand. And that way, when I tell in our press conference, we talk about how many people are out. I make sure that the environment is healthy, the environment is safe as possibly as we can, playing football, following all CDC and all Minnesota State guidelines, following the guidelines of our medical staff and our medical team, our administration, the Big Ten policies, and then you go coach. And then you do everything you possibly can to keep things as normal as you can by following all the CDC and Minnesota State guidelines. As a coach, you want to bring some type of normalcy to things. And that's how I deal with it. I do everything I can, and we do everything we can as a staff, even when staff members are out, to keep things as fluid as possible, because you're balancing and constantly juggling who's in, who's out, which can be very mentally and emotionally taxing. But as the leader, you don't want that to disrupt the preparation because there's other people making those calls to say we do or do not play. And what I do is listen to those, put the protocols in place, and move forward. And we handle it minute by minute, Meg. And again, this is what everybody's going through for the first time. Everybody in the country is dealing with COVID-19 for the first time. But I'm really proud of our medical team. I'm really proud of our medical staff, our trainers, our doctors. I mean, I thank them all the time, everybody. I mean, it's unbelievable what these people do on a daily basis beyond what their normal jobs are, because they're still doing all of that. We're still dealing with injuries and rehabs and everything like that. Surgeries, you're dealing with that stuff. And then even what the administration is dealing with. And then you get into the Big Ten of all of it coming in together. So there's a lot of moving parts, Meg. But again, we handle that as they come.
Absolutely. One last question, then I'll get off my COVID-19. So
that's fine. No, go ahead. It's a pretty big topic right now.
It is a big topic. So I had a couple of questions. The last one for you is just, I've never asked you this, but I've been curious. What has been your ethos behind not sharing, I guess, like the names of players? Obviously, I know there's privacy and medical things, but we haven't ever known the specific number of positive tests on your team at any point in time. We've kind of known about a few here and there, and then you've kind of intimated at some. But I guess I'm kind of curious from your perspective as a coach, why do you feel like that's necessary to maybe not be as specific about the numbers or even the names?
Well, I think there's a few reasons. One, there's HIPAA laws. My job is to always protect our student athletes, their names and exposure to something that's incredibly sensitive like this. We're following all CDC and Minnesota State guidelines immediately when somebody tests positive. This isn't somebody tests positive, they just go ahead and roam and nobody checks on them. They don't have a policy to follow. Our administration has worked walks hand in hand with CDC and again, Minnesota State guidelines to come up with the policies and procedures when somebody does test positive. But for me to talk about the specifics, again, and that's for the student athletes' privacy. But the actual numbers is more of a sports administration way of being able to say, here's our numbers as an athletic department. But again, these aren't people who are testing positive and then can just walk around, go to class and go here and there. And there's certain guidelines. So to me, it's more about making sure that, our HIPAA laws are respected amongst all of our student athletes, especially the ones in football who I'm in charge of, our staff members, the best we possibly can. But the student athletes are our main focus always. But again, as I said before, because they're always changing too, Meg. One thing is you throw a number out there. I mean, we talked about 20, right, of players that weren't playing. Well, within the next hour, it went to 22 somehow, some way. And then it looks like, well, that number wasn't right. Let's backtrack and catch this number. And it's very hard just to throw a number out there, especially when you're dealing with something so fluid and minute to minute, because I want you to get very accurate information. And like I said, about half of that 22 number was part of the COVID protocols, but again, stretched over that 21-day period somehow, some way of when they were in that protocol. It didn't mean 22 players were testing positive on that day for COVID-19. It was they were medically unavailable. And as we get into that, I said about half. So, but I don't feel like that's right to give the names of those players based on all the protections they have as student athletes.
All right, let's go to Chip Scoggins, Star Tribune.
Hey, PJ. There's some speculation over there that maybe Cohen possibly could come back this week. Do you prepare for both him or Mertz, or are you just more looking at the system than the quarterback?
Yeah, Chip. I mean, last week we heard Rondell's coming back, and heard Rondell's coming back for months, and we prepared to have Rondell back. I mean, I know maybe it didn't look like it at times, but you do everything you can to prepare for all great players. And, we'll do the same thing. Graham's a really good player. Cohen's a really good player. They're just a really good football team. And so, they built that to be able to continue to have success year in, year out, compliment to them. And we're working every day to be able to build our program into the sustainability of that. Got a little bit of a head start, and we'll continue to do that. But it's, we prepare for everybody that could play, and we know we could, so we're prepared for them. I don't know if that necessarily changes a lot, Chip. It's not like one's, does just this and the other one does just that. And they both do very similar things. They're both really good. They can get out of the pocket. They're good scramblers. They got a good pocket awareness. They're very accurate. They both can throw the deep ball. They're good in intermediate underneath routes. They control the football team really well. So they both do a lot of really good things.
Let's go back to Andy Greeter.
PJ, we're about a month out to National Signing Day, and you have 16, 17 recruits. What's the max that you will sign this year, and how has it changed with COVID and not being able to have anybody on campus during the season?
It's a great question, Andy. Day by day. I'll have an answer for you way later. You just don't know, especially there's a lot of things coming down the pipeline. There's how many scholarships will you get on the back end? How many seniors do you have? How many of those will be replaced? I mean, that's an administrative decision that we've had conversations, but nothing's been set in stone yet. How many will be able to return? How many won't be able to return? So how many over will you be? How many players in January? There's going to be a one-time transfer probably, right? We've heard of that, where anybody can go anywhere. I mean, it could be, it's going to be like the Great Western Expansion, you could just see people moving teams left and right. I don't know what it's going to look like. It hasn't happened before. So nobody really knows, but I feel really good about the number that we're at right now today. But again, that's minute by minute. So I don't know as we get towards signing day, what that will look like, because that's still 3 weeks away, but we have an idea. We've got to be proactive and prepare for it. I don't think, like right now, I don't feel comfortable signing, the number 25. If you look at us, could we have gotten more? Maybe, but that number you don't see maybe as high for certain reasons. Maybe in other people, they have the ability to go up, and they've been told that, then they know that. But again, we want to be in a position where we can fluidly keep our program moving in the right direction without putting any extra strain on it when the unknown is still out there.
We'll take just a couple more. We'll go.
Really excited about it, though, Andy. Really excited about it. I mean, really excited about this class. This class is really unique. I mean, we'll talk about it come signing day, but this is going to be a fun story to tell.
Thank you, Coach. We'll take just a couple more. We'll go to Phil Irvin with Saturday Tradition.
Hey, PJ, thanks for doing this. This is somewhat related to recruiting, and it's kind of two parts. Number one, you've talked about how 2020 has tested you as a coach. How has it tested the culture of your program? And then when you're building the roster and recruiting, how do you identify players who are going to fit in that culture and then kind of balance that with obviously just sheer talent? Thanks.
Yeah, well, the first thing is, I think the number one thing, though, is test culture's adversity. Because it's easy when there's no adversity, right? So no matter what type of adversity it is, most of the time in football, it's a loss, right? Which we call learn, not a loss, a learn, right? Because we're not a very negative program. So we want to make sure we constantly keep growing. But I think when you have a pandemic like this, then you throw in the social injustice and what happened here in the Twin City area. And then you see what your culture is really made of. Who really takes row the boat and applies it. We talk about not letting the circumstance dictate our behavior, maybe our feelings, but we got to continue to lead through it and be the example. It tests how bad you want something. A lot of people say you want something, but how bad do you really have to have it? Is it a want or is it a need? It tests whether we really want to row the boat, keep our oar in the water during a hurricane, or listen, I only row in tropical storms. If it gets up to the hurricane, I don't row. And you really find out a lot about your football team. You find out about the youth of your football team. You find about the kids you recruited that maybe you thought were a certain way, that maybe they are exactly who you recruited, or they're going to need a lot more development in that area. To say who fits, we ask a series of questions. We get to know players over a long period of time. I think what we always have done is look at the entire body of work from their life, academically, athletically, socially, spiritually, look at the whole thing, how they've handled adversity, what's important to them. Is it just football, or do they like their life? How they do one thing is how they do everything. Is the fit right? I've said this since, I ever became a head coach, maybe even when I was assistant. I'm not for everybody, but I don't know who wants to be for everybody. If you're going to try to be for everybody, that means you're going to have to change who you are to fit certain people to get them to like you. If you're just yourself, and then you attract the people who like that, right? That's going to be a good marriage. That's going to be a good fit. If you have to try to be somebody that you're not, that'll eventually show, and that'll eventually ruin the relationship. And we never want that. We want it real. Remarkable efforts applied to life. We want that real. And times like this is what our program's all about. We've been able to look at our program, look at what we've been through. I'm talking about this city, right? These Twin Cities, our state, and what we're dealing with right now, and what we've dealt with in the past, and what we're still educating ourselves on. And look at how strong our players, in a world that's tearing us apart and dividing us and telling us to keep your distance and don't be around each other. Our team's doing everything they possibly can to stay as connected as they can, because they want to, not because they have to. And I think that says a lot about the character of our football team. Are we perfect? No. Are we striving to educate and learn every day? Absolutely. Are we empathetic are we more empathetic than we've ever been in our lives? I would say yes, as a program and as a culture. So I think all it does, it reaffirms what you're doing. And then not only that, it could expose maybe something that has to be better. And I think that's always healthy. Doing the same thing over and over and expect something to change and get better, that's insanity. You want to constantly keep evolving our program. That's what our HERE campaign's about, helping end racism with education. It's applied to our program for not just now, but years to come. And that's benefiting our program. That's benefiting us. That's benefiting who we are as humans, as human beings, as husbands, as fathers, as humanitarians, as society. And that's how we're going to get everything to change. So again, great question, pretty broad, but there's a lot to it. So anybody got any questions about the game or anything?
Coach, we were just going to take two more questions. I was going to go to Blake with the Daily Gopher and then Daniel House. Blake.
If you don't, I'm fine. I appreciate it. I'll talk about whatever you want to talk about. What's my favorite Thanksgiving meal?
Blake, no pressure, but Coach wants a question about the game.
No, I didn't say that.
I'm kidding, Coach. I'm kidding.
I've got a question about Friday's game, because Justice Harris had a big game on Friday, especially breaking up the touchdown pass before halftime. And I was wondering, is there a common thread between guys like him and Phil Howard, who have maybe been role players or reserves most of their careers, but stuck around and are now getting their chance to shine?
Yeah, it takes everyone here at Minnesota. It takes everyone. And we said that from day one, and now we're starting to see what that looks like. It's going to take a full team effort every single Saturday or Friday or whenever we play. It's going to take a full cultural, everybody rowing the boat together, because you just never know when your turn is going to come. And if anything is teaching these players something, is that you just never know when your opportunity is going to come, and everybody wants your opportunity until it's sitting right there. Right. And you're either going to take it and grab it and run with it, or you're going to let your opportunity pass you by. Because every year there's new players coming in, there's players leaving, right? People getting better, people working really hard, people getting outworked, whatever it is. It's that competition to continue to be the best you can be. But Justice Harris is the example of the how. I mean, we showed that play. We showed about 8 plays that were the difference in the game. Now, remember, there was over 160 some plays in that game, offense, defense, and special teams. Everybody's talking about one play. There was 160 plus plays in the game that made that game what the game was. And everybody's still talking about one play. There was still a play after that play with time on the clock that our player made. And there was a play before that play that we dropped an interception. And there was a few other penalties that, you know, as both teams do, turn into the Big Ten for clarification. But again, there's 160 plus plays, and we showed 8, in our opinion, that showed exactly, and there could have showed a lot more, but we showed an example of 8 plays, and Justice was one of them. Ball's caught, it's a touchdown, but he knocks it out. that extra effort, that extra will, that unconquerable will, that spirit, that crack on the shoulder that got Justice at this level is not that big of a guy, right? That's why he's here. And that's what we want to set the example. If everybody plays that way, we'll continue and continue to take this program to the next level. And there's a lot of young guys who need to see what the how looks like. We can talk about the how. We can talk about row the boat. We can talk about all this elite effort. What does it look like? And we have to constantly show examples of that, maybe more than we did last year. And you're learning that this team needs to see more of that because Carter knew what it looked like, Carter Coughlin, and Kamal Martin knew what it looked like, and Antoine Winfield Jr. knew what it looked like, but maybe some of these other guys who are playing those roles now didn't know what it looked like. And that's what you got to make sure you're constantly teaching.
Last question goes to Daniel House. Daniel, go ahead.
What are the main reasons why you think the offense found an early rhythm against Purdue?
I think that, when you look at offense, I mean, look at, there's a lot of things that go into really good offensive football. And the number one thing is the ball. What you do with the ball, right? Wisconsin scored a ton of points, right? And then you look at last game, they scored 7, where there was 5 turnovers. You're not going to score a lot of points when you turn the ball over 5 times. I thought Mike Sanford, Matt Simon did a great job of doing what Tanner does really well. Completions early, get him in a rhythm. Not only that, when we get a chance to take our shots, complete the shots, and then have our run game the way our run game is. Balance it, spread it out. To say that we have a lot of talented players. The Daniel Jacksons, right? I mean, you saw him as a true freshman. You look at Chris Ottman-Bell, the leading receiver from last game, over 25 yards a catch. And you have Rashad Bateman, and and then you see Seth Green making a big play. It's allowing everybody to be involved. And it's not like we normally don't do that. Look at last year, whether it's Crab or Bateman or Tyler Johnson, they're all involved. But now we're talking about some of the, the Cam Wileys and the Trey Potts when he's healthy, and the Bryce Williams and Mo, and then the receivers and the tight ends caught some passes. It's being able to, you don't know who's going to be out tomorrow. So if you just game plan for one guy and build it that way, which we've been hurt this year in that at times, then it's going to limit you what you can do on Saturday. And so we want to keep it, give them their opportunity. Whatever they do with their opportunity, it's going to be a growing and learning environment for them, whether they have success or they fail, they're going to grow. And I think that's what we did really well. And we took care of the ball. And we had no takeaways, no turnovers. 1 takeaway, no turnovers. And I think that was the story of the game. Again, 160 plus plays, not 160 plus plays. And we had 0 turnovers, and we gave ourselves the best chance to win and got a takeaway and found a way to win the football game. So, but I thought we got in, we're balanced. And again, I said it since day one, Daniel, when we're balanced, that's when we're at our best. But balanced also now, not just run pass, but now as you start to look at us where we're headed, and then this next recruiting class comes in, there's a lot of people, and that's a good thing. And we're getting a lot of experience in that right now, offense, defense, and special teams, playing a lot of people.
All right, Coach, thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
You got a happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Row the boat, Sky Ma, go Gophers. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.